Hello, and thanks for downloading ConventioNOT podcast. This is Ryan, and during this episode, Mike and I reflect back on some of our recent guests and dig deeper into a few customary current events. We also get to talk more about absolute breakdowns in technology and the creative process. This is the last episode that is recorded over our infamous USB microphones, and we'll be back soon to finish out season 2 with more top-notch interviews that dive beyond the surface of conventional careers. Hopefully by now you're listening to this because we popped up into your download feed on your podcast app. If not, please take a moment to subscribe to the show. Mike and I think you'll dig it. Now, the show.
Maybe we should explain why it's just us. I knew we were going to record this week.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple. We definitely have to talk about failure. Technology.
So we're doing a midsummer episode. It's Mike and I, partially because the feedback has come a little bit that says that not just the interviews are appreciated, right? So,
which is really, honestly, if I can interject, really means a lot, because these are not really what we intended to share with the world at all.
Right.
And the fact that anyone can even tolerate, much less tune in again to hear us talk about anything, is really just the feedback is typically it's not complimentary as much as it is. Yeah, that sounds like I'm in the other room while you two idiots are talking, which is, I mean, that, buddy, that warms my heart. It really does. I can't ask for anything more than that.
It's true. Yeah.
Somebody that I haven't talked to in 10 years, reaching out and being like, hey, man,
right.
Heard you on the radio or whatever. I heard you on the podcast the other day. Sounds like you. Yes. All right.
It means a lot, right?
I don't mind that. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean,
especially
like I said,
with so many buddies who are strewn about the country, career-wise, work-wise, family-wise. It's cool to connect that way. The other thing that I think is important, and what we decided to do, is to just kind of draw a little bit less focused discussion. Each one of our shows, especially in season 2 and as we move on, it has its own draw, right? So, Gabe Buckner's talking about entrepreneurialism, and then Lawrence from Cherry Street Barbecue is talking about really like making a change in your life and doing something. And then Steve and, really his resilience and work ethic. But ultimately, we just want to talk a little bit about each of those shows, because a lot of times they're an hour long. And if anything, we get some of the feedback that, man, I don't listen to hour-long shows, and I'm happy that they were an hour long. So this one will be probably out in that range, just with the two of us, and you'll hear a few of these one-on-ones, but we've drawn in quite a bit of experience throughout the season with the different pieces. I think we also decided to re-release a really powerful episode from season 1, which is called Climbing the Dragon with Dan Sennett, where he talks about recovery and moving from recovery from substance abuse into entrepreneurialism, ultimately into giving back to the community of those who are also recovering like himself. And we have decided to re-release that one. You might even hear that one next after this episode, right?
Yeah, I would love to share. I mean, and I think that was one of our earlier recordings and even editing. So we've cleaned it up a little bit. We'll call it a remix.
Don't call it a remix too loud. You won't get invited into Jason Aldean's kitchen and bar. Oh man, I am salty today, aren't I, Michael?
I'm telling you, I knew. I can. This is the beauty of the visual with the audio, is I can see the look on your face. Because again, Ryan, you're just not a man who's been told no that many times.
I don't get told the no very often.
It's just a nice segue, bud. I think we need to let's talk a little bit more about rejection. But let me talk first,
okay,
if you don't mind. So in doing this, like we said, we've been fortunate enough to have a few guests on this season, but it's a constant pursuit, and what you interpret as being a worthy guest is a horrible phrase, but in my eyes, like, everyone has a pretty good story to tell. And I think one of our pursuits in this is like, getting good at helping those people tell those stories, i.e. improving our ability to interview people. But B, just getting those stories out there. So I've experienced some, rejection in this realm, like specifically in this podcast, and that there's been a number of people I've reached out to, and that I know them from various capacities, whether it's just through friendship or some professional affiliation, and sometimes they say no, and that's I'll be honest, man. I didn't really think I would care at first, but no matter what, if you've identified someone or at least something that you think you can kind of communicate with someone about, and it's hard to not interpret that rejection and like take it personal and to wonder. At least for me, this is my default mechanism. And any failure and any rejection, it's easiest for me to just look inward, right? Just beat the hell out of myself. Not really a productive process. It's kind of helped me in life, but I can't say it's ultimately that productive. And I don't really have a takeaway. More so just wanted to share the realities of like, you and I get on here, and if we have a guest, we're 100% focused on that guest. If we're talking to each other, we're kind of ribbing each other, but you and I have a lot of other conversations about the podcast, not about the podcast, that aren't recorded. And, we talk about some of that sort of stuff, and going through that like type of rejection as you're also trying to develop this like creative, not process, but a productive way to share creative sides of yourself. But you're gonna take shots, right? And like it's always a matter of, hey man, other people got shit going on too. And I think you just have to always accept that there's gonna be those. It's not always about you, Mike in particular. It's not always about me. Sometimes it is, and I'm okay with that too, but just kind of being honest about the reality of, man, I thought we were just doing this for fun and I wasn't going to care about it at all. And that's difficult for me. I don't really participate in a lot of things that I don't very quickly become either enthralled with or dismissive of. And I've grown real passionate and appreciative of this because this provides me with a lot. But anything that you kind of value, it's not going to be rosy all the time, right?
Sure.
So you're going to get some no's. And more recently, I had what I would deem more as a failure. But again, that's through the eyes of the beholder. But basically, this one, I'll make a long story short. I conducted an interview without Ryan, and it wasn't like covert or anything. Ryan wasn't available. Again, through the summer, we've just had our schedules have varied a bit. So I had someone out here in Hawaii that I was really keen on interviewing, has a really incredible story to share. And Ryan wasn't available. So I said, all right, man, like, I'll see if I can fly on my own here. And I went and I interviewed the guy, and we just had an amazing conversation. To me, that's what the interviews are about. It's just walking away feeling like it was a good talk. And sure enough, man, it was a good talk. And I knew without having to listen to it, there's good content on there. I'm going to pass it along to the brains of the operation, Ryan. And in passing it along, I gave it a quick listen, and the audio seemed a little fuzzy. So I listened to it a little bit more, and to make a long 130-minute long, scratchy, fuzzy, noisy audio story a little bit shorter, I screwed it up. The mic wasn't in the right place. The mic wasn't, properly tuned. And I couldn't help but feel like, and by screwed it up, I mean, it wasn't salvageable. I sat down, I interviewed someone, had an amazing chat, had some really good audio, and the quality was completely lost due to inadequate preparation, limited understanding of equipment. I could go on. There's a couple other things, but that was I thought rejection was tough. the only thing worse than rejection is when, someone says yes and then you fuck it up. I was just, it hit me because I felt like I wasted his time. Mm-hmm. And I did, right? Like I did waste his time. I would love to think that he got something out of just having the conversation, but because I didn't get the impression that he had visions of grand promotion or anything like that. But ultimately we had a goal and we failed to achieve it due to my shortcomings. And that, man, like, I talked to you about it. I was rattled. I mean, that one really, it was a kick. I was nauseous. I know that seems melodramatic. That is melodramatic. It doesn't seem it, but I was sick to my stomach.
It's tough. I mean, I think that, and we talked just slightly about this, but the creative process is one that is not over until it's over. And it hurts worse. Like, it's almost like this parabola, right? Like, so when you start, it's not that big of a deal if you lose it, and then it goes up.
Yeah, you don't care.
Up and up. There's like this top of the bell curve where your work is done, right? And then the work is done, but then like it keeps going, as which like you got to produce the work and publish it down. And you keep carrying more and more and more, right? Until it
the time keeps moving on, right? As long as you're moving along that x-axis, for me, at least, usually time equals involvement, like emotional attachment too.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think it did lead at least to a little bit more serious research of some technology pieces, right? It's time for us to probably upgrade a little bit from our USB microphones.
If we didn't progress, we'd always be failures, right? I mean, there's plenty of stumbles along the way.
Damn,
but
I would be miserable. I don't take losing very well.
No.
So if we didn't progress, I would probably be even a more miserable person than I.
There are much worse problems to have, and I'm really, really ecstatic to say that I've spoken with said guest.
Okay.
I explained what happened, and he was not only understanding. He didn't berate me at all. He waited 48 hours to call me back. I think probably had to calm down a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. He was understanding, and he was willing to do it again. So we're going to pack everything up and try to do it again, but probably in a month or so.
Sure.
Probably not for a few weeks here. I got to let him get back to work and erase the memory of our last conversation.
Yeah. One thing that I don't think I prepared for when we started to think about interviewing people was what a intimate commitment it is for the guests. Because all of our guests, when we have the follow-up conversations, I feel proud because all of them say I've had a great time in interviewing with you guys and getting to know you guys, because usually the person knows one of the two of us, not both of us.
Yeah, in some capacity, for sure.
Right, in some capacity. And ultimately, the thing that I don't think anybody's prepared for is like how deep they end up getting when they start to talk to us. So I hope that you guys don't lose any of that in the re-interview. Part for me is learning to become a journalist. Once upon a time, I went to college on a journalism scholarship. And I don't remember being a journalist at all. And that was sure as fuck before podcasts. Man, I should not say that F word. I'm sorry. That was sure as heck before podcasts came out.
We're
right?
trying to get better, right? That's what this little segue is about. All our flaws and trying to improve upon them.
I want to at least use the curse words for emphasis.
No, we're not going to be able to completely. If you and I are going to continue to have honest conversations, there will be profanity included. So just to touch on that point, one of the comments that Ryan and I have gotten back from one of our incredible listeners is that, maybe excessive profanity isn't ideal for a wide range of audiences. I'm paraphrasing there, but
I think it's more than one listener, but yes.
I'll be honest, man. And to anyone out there listening right now, I appreciated that feedback because I don't disagree with the notion that anybody sitting around swearing profusely in conversation either doesn't appreciate punctuation or doesn't have anything better to say. And that's very judgmental, but I do feel that way. With that said, I do have a tendency to use expletives. And it depends on where the environment I'm in, to be clear. I gotta be more professional. I have a very like professional day job where I have to like put a suit on and present in front of people. And sometimes I go in front of juries and I testify. I'm not swearing then. It's very voluntary usage. And in the podcast, we touch on some things, and there's a lot of emotion being thrown around here. And yeah, I'm admittedly though someone who probably swears a little more than he needs to in general conversation. And I don't appreciate the effect it has on people, because I think when I say a certain word and I'm 6'2" and I speak at a particular volume and I, enunciate in a particular way, people can misinterpret my passion or intensity and even aggression at times. And I almost never swear for aggression. I'll swear in response to pain, but that's not the same thing. Like you stub your toe and you swear. But like, if I'm really mad at someone, no, expletives are not like, I'm usually pretty clear thought at that point, and my words are chosen very carefully. And yeah, they're not weighed down with profanity.
Right.
So sorry, that was a really long tangent about me saying we got some feedback. Someone said we probably swear too much.
More than one.
When I went back and listened, and my wife confirmed this, it was like, yeah, Mike, every time you chime in, there's an expletive. And I just, that's no good. Like, I'm not proud of that.
My father-in-law is a very well-respected architect.
Yeah, he's a pretty big name in architecture.
Yeah. And he always says this, and Anna says this too, but learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. And he'll even say, I use explicatives in meetings and presentations in front of the biggest of boards or community organization groups. However, I use it thoughtfully. So yes, it's not always been the easiest for me, because I think for me, I learned how to communicate in a different way than a lot of people do. And I think I learned to communicate a little bit more violently as a young man. We talked a lot about this in some season 1 episodes, but my communication when I'm frustrated, I tend to push it to a head pretty quickly. So sometimes I learned, well, not sometimes, I think in most cases I've learned that by using those strong languages at a loud voice, it works pretty quickly to communicate what you want to communicate. However,
it gets your message across, but it's hard to control the receipt.
Right.
You're shooting with a shotgun, right? Like that's
Well, and sometimes this could be beneficial, but depending on how you want to control the conversation that you're having, if somebody is more focused in thinking about why you used a certain word or term or kind of like jab, then you may not be listening about your other things. And if you're artful enough to use those two things, like Pablo Picasso was talking about here, in other words, you light somebody on fire by jabbing them, and then you talk to them in another way, and then you jab them again. I think, that's artful, and that's a way to communication effectively. But violent communication early on, whether it be verbal or physical, and God knows history of it both. But ultimately, I think that those are things that like maybe maturity teaches you. I don't know about maturity. Well, I don't know what it is that teaches you that, Mike.
I was going to say in terms of maturity, like 25-year-old Mike would have responded to that criticism probably with a healthy expletive, 37-year-old Mike hears it and appreciates the goal of it is to, there are some people who are more sensitive to things we're going to be like compassionate, decent people. You should be considerate of other sensitivities. It doesn't mean you have to comply to them and change who you are. But if your goal is to reach a wider audience and you're excluding people without even meaning to, come on, that's a no-brainer. And like I said, when I swear, it's usually for my own entertainment. So removing it isn't a huge significant thing. But hopefully, moving forward, I can still be entertaining. You know, I always respect comedians who are funny and never swear. Like, that's a really hard thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
I can't tell a good, like, anecdotal story without profanity. Like, especially if it's, like, self-deprecating. Like, come on, man. Those are, like, that helps you really get a point across. And when you're making fun of yourself, hey, you can't be offended by me making fun of me. Like, that's not, you don't have the right to do that.
Ooh, that's a strong statement.
I know it's funny, right? Like, funny.
That's a good segue, though. Have you watched the Chappelle? Speaking of comedians and speaking of people who use their language in the right way. Yeah, have you seen the new Chappelle special?
No.
Okay, so it's called Sticks and Stones. We're not going to both be able to talk about it, but I will say this because I do think it's a good segue, and I mean it. He quite artfully assembles his perspective, his apology, and his stance in this special. And I become more and more a fan of the stand-up comedians, especially with this like satirical bullshit that we have going on in the farce of leadership in Washington, which I think you are a personal joke if you follow. But this guy does a great job of outlining, without like selling himself out, both some of the things that are out there as well as some of the things that he feels certain ways about. So we won't fall left or right or Democrat or Republican or CNN or Fox or any of the tribes that people like to support. We're about to kick back up into tribe season, right? It's August. We're about to be into November. But I was super impressed with this guy. And furthermore, I'm super impressed with the way that the comedians are representing American society right now, because I really feel there aren't many other people that are talking about it. It's podcasters and comedians that aren't adulterated by ad dollars, editors' perspectives, or like rewriting their content. I really think so.
I mean, I know he tends to talk about a variety of things, but is there a focus in Sticks and Stones?
It's politics. It's politics.
Oh, yeah. Specifically. Okay.
Less about buzzword politics, but more about he calls him Juicy, but Jussie Smollett. You remember him? A lot about LGBT.
Okay.
Served like kind of some jokes about that. Okay. Really like touches on all of them, man. He touches on all the biggest
stuff. No, and he's phenomenally like, I don't know, man. He definitely has some strong opinions on those topics, but I don't know. I think he delivers them intelligently and like unapologetically, which I respect.
He's more grown and more mature than he was when he produced Chappelle Show as well, too, right?
But he's always been, I mean, his comedy now is, I've always found him to be hilarious. But yeah, man, like his mastery of the language and his ability to communicate it, right? Like I would love to just sit down and think about, say he's got like a 30-line bit. You know what I mean? Like how many times does he reconstruct those 30 lines? Like how many times like he comes up with a joke, right? And then he forms a bit around, and I don't have any idea the process. I remember one, he famously he talks about how he had a bowl in his house with punchlines in it. Yeah. So he would just pick out the punchline and then make a joke to it, you know? And like but back to what I was actually saying, like how many times does he deconstruct and reconstruct those individual lines to find out what the most effective way to present this? Because that's what it is, right? Like stand-up comedy and like their timing and their delivery of something is, I mean, the content is important, I think, but I could go up there and say exactly what Dave Chappelle is saying and no one would think it was funny. You know what I mean?
That's for sure. Yeah.
Let's do that.
Let's not do that.
Let me read the transcript of Sticks and right, like, because that's such a gnarly thing about comedy.
Right.
And I agree with you, man. Like these stand-up comedians, they are literally on a stage with nothing protecting them, expressing their own opinions about things we are all thinking about. I'm not saying we agree with their opinions or that it's necessarily even totally okay that they use that platform in that way, but they got it. They were willing to stand up on stage and say some shit. And it's under the guise of entertainment, but it's transferring information. It's sharing opinion. Music is entertainment, and I'm not saying it's just that. It obviously can be more powerful than that, but like, comedy is literally just a man or a woman getting up there and sharing their internal stuff with a bunch of people they generally don't know.
Sure.
Like there can be no gnarly, like this is a horrible analogy, but when you get in the water with sharks, it's our understanding that the sharks are going to attack us. The sharks don't want to attack us. They got better shit to eat. When you get up on a comedy club stage, that audience is worse than sharks. Sure. I don't know if they want you to fail, but like there could be you and I could do this all day. I can get up and present and talk about like professional stuff in front of crowds, but comedians to me are the bravest of all entertainers.
Right.
Like without,
yeah, you don't get heckled in a meeting. Well, you might if you're in one of my meetings and you don't bring your shit, but
I mean, even if you're a terrible singer, you can look down the whole time.
Yeah.
And they may throw sticks and stones at you, but well, sorry, poor pun there. But I mean, comedy to me is just and with the shit that's going on in society today, and all these like ways that we're receiving what seems like an opinion, but it's been so filtered and like modified that
this isn't so much of a debate as a statement, but I would love to continue on to a debate over one of our media feeds. We are signing away our freedoms left and right, up and down, because it makes us feel unsafe and uncomfortable that somebody might take advantage of a freedom that's granted to them that we don't care for. Left and right and left.
What do you mean? Say that in normal words.
Well, we will sign away our freedoms to say, like the freedom of speech. We will sign away the right to say specific words because it makes us feel certain ways when somebody else says them. Right. I'm going to sail around the Second Amendment because that's a whole other thing. And like
I was going to say, I know what you're really talking about.
No,
here,
I'm not,
right?
man. I'm not. We should do Second Amendment opinion stuff. I'd like to bring somebody on who's a little bit more expert than me, but that's not what I'm talking about. We will sign away the right to be surveilled. Okay. Surveillance. If that surveillance allows the surveillors or the people who are surveilling somebody to capture somebody that we don't like. We will sign away those rights without thinking about how those rights could come back to affect us.
Yeah. Well, I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be. Neither should anyone else. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. Like, according to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I hear you though, but it is in that obviously is more than much bigger than a Second Amendment right. But remember when we talked a few weeks ago, man, there was some crazy shit going on in the US. So it's crazy, huh?
I'd like to see some adjustments to the Second Amendment. I think it's time.
That's all that was going on for like a week or two.
Yeah.
Like literally there was a shooting every other day.
Yeah.
And then it just gets quiet again. Like, I don't know,
bet
man.
When we look back on this, we're going to be extraordinarily disappointed when we find out what the impetus was for these shootings and what the impetus was for the news coverage. And I don't know why. I don't know if I make this suspicion, but we're going to look back and we're going to say, what the F was going on and how were we manipulated?
To me, the ultimate tragedy is, and you and I talk about this all the time. Like, I know that you and I I don't think we have, starkly opposing views on anything. I think my views are they're a little too dynamic for anyone to staunchly be on the opposite end of anything at any time, because my shit changes.
Sure.
And when we talk about gun laws and all that stuff, in general, and I'm overstating here, but I know you and I have different feelings on the topic. You know what I mean? And we've had, I wouldn't even call them debates in the past. And that's all I'm getting at, is that you and I have a very different overall viewpoint, maybe oversimplifying it, but we can still talk about it. And they're not debates. I don't think of them as debates. I don't think of them as arguments. I think you're reasonable. I think I'm reasonable. We may have different feelings about the thing, but no thing is that black and white. That's all I'm getting at.
Right.
Is it doesn't matter what the issue is.
Right.
If you are going to simplify anything involving human beings down to a yes or a no, a black or a white, a blue or a red, you're trivializing it.
Sure.
If it's worth thinking about that much, it's worth appreciating there's more than two sides to the coin.
Yeah.
And it just disgusts me how intolerant and how unable. We're getting better at talking louder. You know what I mean? But nobody listens. Nobody's listening to shit, and people can't even communicate. Even see slight connections. The connection that, hey man, we all care. We all care. Nobody wants these awful things to happen.
Right.
We all agree that there's mental health issues here, and there's a million. It's big. It's really big and complicated. It's not just a constitutional amendment.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's so much bigger than that. Oh, change it all tomorrow. See what happens. Shit's still gonna happen.
Right.
That's the reality. And I just don't understand.
I think there's something that you and I have between each other that would be either an anecdote or a microcosm of what's required for all of this, which is trust. We used to trust each other more, right? You and I trust each other that if we don't agree on something, and there's things that we don't agree on, for sure, politically, we're a little different, and maybe some other things, not just politics, right? But we trust that we'll still be friends. And I do not think that exists. It certainly doesn't exist from governing bodies across America to the governed. It doesn't exist in a lot of environments. It doesn't exist in a lot of corporate environments to the employee. We don't fucking trust in each other anymore. I use that F word on purpose.
Yeah, no, that was a good usage of it. I was just going to say, and it's not a hierarchical thing. It's same level too, right? You and I, you say trust. I was going to say respect, but it's similar.
Trust is respect.
And that I do trust you to the extent that even if I disagree with you, I know you as a person. And what you are trying to sell me, even if I don't see the obvious benefits of this thing, and I don't mean to use the word sell nonchalantly there. It's just, persuade or whatever it may be. There's a reason why you are interested in it. And it's deep down, it's something that's going to benefit you. And I trust and respect you enough to kind of accept that if it's going to benefit you, it's probably going to benefit me too. But if you don't trust somebody, right? If somebody just shows up on your door is selling you something, and I know that's not a great comparison, but that's sort of politically, man, and between a boss and an employer, there is just absolute, and there doesn't need to be prior deceit. There's just an innate distrust in almost anybody now, right? And if you don't trust somebody and you have an even slightly differing opinion, you can't help. And I'm projecting you can't help, but I personally have a hard time at assuming that everyone has the best intentions, especially if they're really trying to persuade me on something. The harder they're trying, the more I'm I don't know.
Well,
I was kind of believing it at first. Yeah. When you said I could take it or leave it, I was thinking about taking it. But now that you say I can't live without it,
it's a hard no.
I'm really, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we went on a little tangent there, but it is that's that's what all this stuff kind of boils down to, right? Like, it's not always, listen, man, a lot of the times it's not an end game. It's not like, there's no point to be reached, but the product of the process can be greater than any end game. You know what I mean? Like the conversations and the information shared and just illuminating, wow, there's another perspective to be considered. Totally missed that.
Man, I hope that this is a period that we're in which we don't know how to consider other perspectives because there are so many perspectives coming, right? You know,
and this is a really pessimistic view, which, you know, I'm not normally like this, but name one thing we're currently doing that is improving our ability to send and receive feedback. Like, we literally, like, no, there's nothing. That's not what social media is. That's not what social
monitoring would be the only one I could come up with.
Yeah, which is a horrible consideration. Like, we're literally just being objectively monitored now, right? We don't really talk or communicate, but I know your DNA. Like, and so does Russia.
And I know how many steps you had.
Yeah, like, that's so.
And I qualify myself. I've heard Anna say that, or Anna's friends, not Anna. I've heard people in my circle, let me not make it so specific, talk about how they qualify, how they feel based on how other people exercise in their social media feed.
Wait, say that again.
They qualify how they feel because of how other people, or according to how much other people worked out or exercise as compared to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the natural, just comparing yourselves with everyone else, right? Like, that's just
well, there's a natural part of that, and then there's a component which seems to be spiraling out of control.
Yeah, no, like
yourself, right? You know,
well, it's just the exposure to it, right? The natural part of it is the reality that you've always wanted to keep up with the Joneses, right, or the Johnsons, or whatever the hell you want to call your neighbor.
Correct. You weren't exposed to the data before. That's true,
man. Like, that's human nature. It's just a matter of, to me, and this is just one man's opinion, but it's just a matter of exposure. And like, not only is it available, but I think there's starting to become a you're on or you're off the boat. You know what I mean? Like, and it's starting to get difficult to like do things if you're not on that boat. You know, like, if you have something you want to share with the world, or even maybe with your region, try doing it without social media presence. Like, try doing it old school. Go ahead. Take out an ad in the newspaper. See how many calls you get. Like, I'm sorry, right? You know who's going to call you? Old people, because that's the only people that even know the newspaper exists. Like, conversely, go ahead, get 1,000 likes on Instagram. 900 of those are from like high schoolers. So I don't, is that the demo? And to each their own. That may be your ideal, your core demographic, but it's just it's a free for all out there, and like, that's the scary reality is if, you're sharing something out there. I had that article published the other day in that magazine, and for me, man, like, that's such a terrifying thing. You and I do this podcast, and I figure like 20 people are going to listen to it, Sorry, that's very pessimistic again, but actually more people than that listen to this. But anyways, but I once in a while I write for this magazine called The Inertia, and they do it's like a kind of lifestyle magazine, but their focus is kind of on like surf and ski. But I think it's a pretty cool magazine because it's pretty open in terms of contributors to the magazine. There's a lot of guys like me that just write articles for them. But B, they tend to take on a variety of topics, not just trending things, but controversial things, but all in the realms of those, like in those arenas, surfing, skiing, etc. Anyways, it's a platform for me to like get to do my forensic stuff, not on like actual cases that I'm working on. So I write these articles where I'm talking about like surfing. My last one was about a wave in Tahiti called Chopu, and basically what would happen to a human being if Chopu fell on you. So they're kind of just like weird, interesting, one-off type articles. Well, interesting is my word, but anyways, what I'm getting at is I write this article on my couch. I share it with my wife. She gives me some edits. I share it with the editor of the magazine. He likes it. He puts it out. All of a sudden, something I wrote on my couch 24 hours later is accessible to millions of people. I mean, I don't know.
Sure.
Again, how many clicked on the article? I don't know. I don't know what their daily I don't know what their daily readers are. Like I've purposely, but this has been a transition because I started writing these articles for them a couple years ago. And the first time I wrote it, man, I was just sitting on the page, waiting for comments, waiting for anything to pop up. Like obviously being hopeful, right? Like you're hopeful that the world is going to love you and say, we want more, we want more. But that is not what the world generally responds with. That right. is just in that, like, you want to be a creative person? Because I did not. Like, I still don't think of myself in that realm. Like I think of myself, I'm just a scientist, right? Like, and
But science isn't creativity? Like scientists aren't creative too?
I don't think of it that way. I think of science as like translation. You know what I mean? Like I think of math is just like, no, man, I just studied that language more than you did. You may be able to speak Spanish. I can speak numbers. But yeah, I guess the creative part is taking something objective, like I think of most science, and translating it to something that I think a wider audience, i.e. non-scientific people, would be interested in. So that's where I think I get to pretend I'm creative or get to try to be creative. But in doing so, in sharing something with the world, I can't really tell you, man. Like it's fine now because I put them out there and I don't check. I don't want to know what comments are being made. I don't like if I share it on my personal stuff, I want to respond to people that comment to me personally. But like I don't look at the message board on the inertia. Like there's no need. It's usually not an abundance of positivity, which is a bummer, right? And I've had conversations with the editor and he's like, dude, no one does. We've actually...
You can't look at that yet.
Yeah. They have to adjust their like commenting sections because it becomes do we want to even host this? Like, and if I'm a magazine at some point, it's like, no, if you're a reader and you hate stuff that much, write an article. Write a letter to the editor or contact the author independently, right? Like, because that's all doable. Mm-hmm. But if I'm a magazine or any kind of platform where I'm offering a space for creative people this isn't a comedy club. You know what I mean? We're heckling, I guess, as part of comedy. Like,
right.
It's just it's
unpaid author, for God's sake.
Society. Yeah, that is usually the way most people choose to respond. Great article, but I noticed this, and could have done this better. It's like, then do it, man. Then do it. Like, thanks for appreciating the article.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. It's probably a little bit of a kind of a rite of passage in which if you're not noticed on social media, you just like post and you get your little feedback or whatever, But then if people are commenting negatively on you, you have like some level of notoriety because it's generally not the people who attack you online.
Yeah.
Save some like real douchebags that you went, to whatever.
Right. Like, because if strangers, if you're now invoking passion from people you don't know, it depends on what your intent was, but you are getting through. That can no longer be argued, right? Like imagine if we started getting all kinds of comments and we're like, Mike, you suck, but Ryan, you suck worse. You're like, whoa, they've really been listening.
Right. Imagine that. I don't know if we have any comments. I think our real only big like source of random comments like that would be YouTube. And I don't know that our YouTube channel got taken off too much yet. It's ConventioNOT podcast because there's no video up there. It's really just, I published it honestly because I had two friends, and I know you have a couple as well, who listen to podcasts on YouTube. And so we published it out there.
I did get one feedback from a friend who said, in this, I'm using his words. He said, "What the fuck? I went on YouTube and it's just audio. What's the point of you being on YouTube if you're not going to share the video?" To which I responded, "That is a very fair comment."
Yeah. Well, I think as we get more mature in our show, we will publish live videos. But as of right now, we still cut too much out, really. The video would be kind of disjointed a little bit, and then the editing software is a little bit different that way.
I'm looking at, you just pulled this up. I'm looking at that shot of when that dog bit me in the face. That was pretty funny.
Whew, that was an interesting thing. Yeah, we got a couple cool ones.
We've had a couple interviews that we haven't shared with the world yet that they'll come out. They'll have their day.
They'll make it way out for sure. I've got a couple more videos. The other thing about a video, and I know we probably actually have to get towards the end of this episode because we will get long in the tooth, is that an hour-long video is pretty tough, man. Like
size,
size and to get through.
I'll be honest. If we get a single person that listens to this and says, "I care about seeing you guys do this," then we'll make an effort. But for me, I like for the conversation, but in terms of sharing with the world, like nobody wants to see us.
No. We keep it mostly to clips. I actually have some clips that are edited that I think the clips are fun out there.
I think the clips are fun, and hopefully I'm going to get some better equipment. I'm going to start to mix up venues a little bit more. Be able to actually do interviews maybe outside of my kitchen. I mean, I'm really excited. We've got a handful of guests in the cooker, or that's a really bad phrasing of it, but we've got a handful of guests that have agreed to come on the show, that we're going to be doing interviews. I think we probably got, a few interviews over the next few weeks. So between this episode of us chatting a bit, and if I don't know if you're going to break this up or not, but re-release of Dan, I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to go into the second half of season 2. I assume that probably most of those will end up in season 2, and I obviously know about the confirmed guests going through September, and then I guess we'll end it at the end. Probably sometime at the end of the summer, headed into the fall, would be our intention for season 2. We're still trying to figure this out. Like, I know these murder podcasts that I guess it seems like mostly ladies listen to the murder podcast. Go figure. But ultimately, like, they release the whole thing all together.
You say murder podcast, but can I just touch on, like, how come? Yeah, like most podcasts, it's just negative shit. Like, listen to this 27-part series. It's about unreported child molestation. Like, what? I don't want to listen to one episode about that. Like,
fuck, man. If you listen to the news, everybody getting molested these days. That's it. That's how it is.
This is not a joke.
I don't know if the news has anything to do with that.
Yeah, but
right? Like, it's not a joke by any stretch, but I'm not so sure I believe all that shit, bro.
Off there, but you were saying a lot of these murder were you talking about like season lengths and like episodes?
Yeah. So, I think what happens a lot of times is they drop all of the episodes at once, which is not something that we've been able to have the luxury to do just yet because we are getting up and rolling. But, as we head into season 3 and season 4, I'll be curious, and I'm always eager to hear feedback. I mean, we do get a lot of feedback from listeners. Like, how do you like to do it? Like, do people binge them? Like, I know people binge those story podcasts, right?
I've seen some other podcasts that aren't broken into seasons at all. And it'll be like podcast number 77, podcast number 78. I mean, at the end of the day, I think you and I should be completely honest with the audience, as we always are. Like, we don't know what the hell we're doing. So how do we know when to end a season and start a new one?
Right.
To be clear, right. I think we're honest about that first season wasn't even an intended like production, right? Like we were just going to talk, get used to our equipment. And then when we started interviewing guests, that would be worth sharing with the world. So the transition from season 1 to 2 was kind of obvious. You know, we went from you and I rambling to inviting some people on, but like the differences between season 2 and season 3, I don't have a plan for that.
Maybe we'll put some polls out.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and if we put a poll out and you're the one person who comments on it, you may be basically in charge of the future of our show. So imagine that. Imagine that. You're basically...
Because both of us are control freaks, but we do listen. We will listen to feedback like that. Yeah, for sure.
I would love that. I would love any kind of feedback is pretty special, man. We talked a little bit, mostly about the negative feedback we got. Just real quick. We also have gotten, the family feedback. When you and I first started this, I mean, your vision was much grander than mine, but you were pretty clear on the hope of being able to produce something that we, like on a borderline professional level that wasn't our profession, right? Like, because what we do in our profession, we can't really share with others. It's almost completely confidential, much less share with your family. So I know that was like a goal that you had at the outset, that like we could, we always say creative, but I think ultimately like you and I could do something together that we could share with people, right? Like that wasn't confidential and, under the guise of work. And to be able to help other people do that and to get feedback from like their families that like, the Hetzels were really incredibly supportive. And I just couldn't have asked for a better reward for doing it. You know what I mean? Like, not that the reward, but you get some satisfaction just from the participation, but to get that feedback from someone's family, and I'm giving us too much credit to pretend that all that wouldn't have been communicated otherwise. Right. But it's pretty special to even be a part of it.
Yeah, it really is. It truly is.
I mean, coming personally, bro, like we interviewed my brother and we talked about some gnarly stuff that doesn't exactly come up at the dinner table every Christmas. And I've had some mixed feedback from my family about that interview, just in terms of like, how it conjures up some feelings, right? My brother's really active in his recovery and he participates really actively in AA and things like that. So his story is something that is constantly fresh to him and it's constantly something he relives and shares on a regular basis. But, you share that story on a podcast and your family has to revisit something that maybe they've put in a different compartment. You know what I mean? Or maybe they've compartmentalized it differently. And my brother and I are both pretty good at self-deprecation. So a lot of our truths come through with a slice of humor. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, right? Like I got my parents. I haven't talked to my dad much about it. I don't know that my dad listened to the whole thing. I'll be honest.
Yeah. There's some cross-generational shit too, right?
Yeah.